It began like any other peaceful morning, the kind that made people believe the world would never change. The air was calm, the sea was still, and the sky above the cities was painted in the soft blue of an ordinary day. Families were out for breakfast, children played near the parks, and no one looked up to see what was coming until the clouds began to bleed. At first, it was subtle, a faint shimmer, a distant hum. But within minutes, the blue faded to crimson, and then to burning red. Every eye on Earth turned upward as the sky filled with shapes too massive to comprehend. Thousands of ships, black and gleaming, hung above the atmosphere like shadows cast by another world. The Imperial Armada had arrived. Across the globe, chaos erupted. Governments scrambled to contact the newcomers, sending peace transmissions in every known galactic language, hoping, praying, that the visitors meant diplomacy. But then, a voice echoed across every channel, calm and cold. This world belongs to the Empire. The translation systems repeated it in every human tongue, each word landing like a hammer on glass. The Imperial commander, Admiral Tavaran of the 9th Dominion Fleet, stood aboard his massive flagship Obsidian Spear and watched the planet below spin slowly, his golden eyes filled with pride. "Primitive world," he muttered. "They'll surrender before we fire a shot." His officers laughed, confident and cruel, unaware of what slept beneath the planet's surface. To the people of Earth, it was chaos, traffic frozen, power grids failing, the world's internet choked with fear. But to a few, it was a signal. Beneath the surface of Colorado, in a fortress buried a mile underground, a red light began to pulse in the control room of the Earth Defense Command. For 50 years, it had remained dark, sealed, waiting. Now it was alive again. A woman in uniform, Commander Helena Ward, stared at the monitor as the words Protocol Horizon activated appeared. "It's happening," she whispered. "They've finally come." Around her, soldiers and technicians moved fast, unlocking systems that hadn't seen daylight in decades. Generators roared to life. Warning sirens echoed through steel tunnels. Humanity's silence was ending. On the surface, the world went dark. Satellites powered down one by one, severing communication. To the Empire, it looked like surrender. "They've shut themselves off," an officer reported aboard the Obsidian Spear. "No transmissions, no defenses, nothing." Admiral Tavaran smiled. "Excellent. Begin atmospheric entry. Let's show them what real power looks like." The Imperial Armada moved into position, massive ships forming a network across the stratosphere, their engines glowing like suns. Beams of energy carved through the clouds as the first wave descended. But below, deep within the Earth, a voice spoke through the intercom. "Signal is ready, Commander," said a technician. Helena Ward looked at the screen showing thousands of Imperial vessels blotting out the continents. "Send it," she said. In that moment, a low-frequency pulse spread across the planet, silent to human ears, but powerful enough to echo through space. It lasted 7 seconds, and then the Earth went completely dark. No signals, no energy signatures, nothing. To the Empire, it was confusing. "We've lost readings," said one of Tavaran's navigators. "They've disappeared." The Admiral frowned. "Disappeared how? This planet's full of cities." But even as he spoke, every scanner returned the same data. Earth was dead quiet. The Admiral leaned forward, suspicion rising. "No world that advanced shuts down everything at once. Find out what they're hiding." But far below, the truth was awakening. Under the Atlantic Ocean, hidden inside vast trenches, massive platforms began to rise from the dark depths. Their surfaces glowed with faint blue light, revealing enormous structures covered in steel plating and magnetic rails stretching for miles. Weapons, ones that had never been fired before. The Earth Defense Command had named them Sentinels, and they were humanity's last line of defense. Each platform hummed to life as energy surged through coils deep beneath the seabed. On their screens, commanders watched the alien ships hovering above. "Target lock," said one officer. "Confirmed." Helena Ward spoke into the comm, her voice calm. "The order stands. If they fire, we respond." Up above, The Imperial ships began releasing smaller vessels, drop carriers, drones, assault craft. The first bolts of plasma streaked down from orbit, striking the empty plains outside major cities. The explosions rocked the ground, sending shockwaves through buildings and mountains. On the obsidian spear, Admiral Tavaran stood proudly, hands behind his back. "Resistance is irrelevant," he said. "Begin atmospheric control. This world is ours now." His words had barely left his lips when the ocean roared. From the Atlantic, beams of white light erupted into the sky, massive, blinding, and impossibly fast. The first struck an Imperial cruiser, cutting it cleanly in half. The second tore through an entire squadron of ships, vaporizing them instantly. The Admiral staggered back as alarms screamed across the bridge. "What was that?" he shouted. "Unknown energy signature," cried his tactical officer. "Source is the ocean." More beams fired, precise, unstoppable, each one hitting a target with perfect accuracy. "They have orbital defense weapons." "Impossible. No readings, no installations. How?" But the Admiral knew now. Earth hadn't surrendered. Earth had been waiting. As the skies burned with fire, hidden bunkers around the world opened like the eyes of a waking giant. Under the deserts of Australia, missile silos that had been buried for a century lifted open, their warheads glowing with strange blue cores. In the mountains of China, vast railguns powered up, shaking the valleys. In Antarctica, the ice split apart as massive metal towers rose, each one humming with energy. Across every continent, human military networks reconnected, their ancient systems linked into one unified command. A voice echoed through every channel, all Earth defense units online. "This is Commander Ward. Operation Horizon is active. All forces engage." For the first time in history, the entire planet was united, not under flags or nations, but survival. Fighter jets scrambled from underground hangars, engines screaming through clouds as they met alien aircraft head-on. Human warships surfaced from the oceans like leviathans, firing missiles that bent around gravity fields and struck their targets without warning. The Empire, caught completely off guard, tried to regroup, but every time they moved, they were hit. "They are predicting our maneuvers," an Imperial pilot shouted. "They're using our own frequencies against us." On Earth's command screens, soldiers watched as data streamed in from captured Imperial signals. Humanity had cracked their code in less than an hour. Meanwhile, far from the main battle, in an isolated bunker beneath the Himalayas, a group of old men and women watched the chaos unfold. They were the architects of the Earth Defense Protocol, the ones who had built humanity's hidden weapon, the Leviathan Initiative. One of them, an elderly scientist named Dr. Abrams, turned to Commander Ward's live feed. "The time has come," he said. "If they've brought their full fleet, we unleash it." Ward hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Do it." Deep in orbit, behind the dark side of the moon, massive shadows began to move. From hidden craters and buried silos, ships the size of cities began to emerge, their hulls black as the void, absorbing every trace of light. These were humanity's secret warships, built from the ruins of decades of peace, the Leviathan fleet. Each ship bore the same insignia, the mark of Earth, a blue circle surrounded by stars. Their engines ignited silently, and the void trembled. "Leviathan Fleet Online," said a voice through the comm orders. "Commander." Ward stood straight, her eyes reflecting the red glow of the enemy ships. "Protect the planet," she said, "and show them what humans are made of." The first Leviathan ship, the Horizon, fired its main weapon. A beam of white energy lanced upward, splitting the clouds, striking an Imperial battleship so fast that even its shield didn't have time to react. The explosion painted the upper atmosphere in gold and red, lighting up the night across half the planet. Cameras captured it, and within seconds, the image spread across human networks. Fear turned into fury. Across every corner of Earth, people cheered through tears. "We're fighting back," shouted a young boy watching the skies from a ruined balcony. "They can bleed." Above them, the Empire realized too late what had happened. The Obsidian Spear's systems overloaded as its sensors tried to track the impossible. "They're not supposed to have this kind of power," one officer screamed. "They were supposed to be backward." Admiral Tavaran's voice shook for the first time. "Then find out what they are," he roared. But before his words could echo again, the horizon lit up. Dozens of Leviathan-class ships appeared from behind the moon, moving in perfect formation. That's not possible," whispered one Imperial technician. "That's a war fleet." It was. But it was not the fleet of a desperate world. It was the fleet of a species that had waited centuries for this moment. The Terran fleet. Humanity had learned, evolved, and hidden in plain sight. The Empire had arrived expecting an easy victory, but they had awakened something far older, far colder. As the first Imperial Armada began to crumble, Commander Ward looked up at the live feeds showing enemy ships burning across the sky. "They thought we were primitive," she said softly, "but they forgot, humans don't surrender." Behind her, alarms blared as new energy readings spiked from space. Another wave of Imperial ships was arriving, bigger, stronger, endless. Yet she smiled faintly. "Good," she whispered. "Then we can show them what annihilation really means." And far above Earth, as the Leviathan fleet turned to face the endless darkness, one last human transmission spread across the stars. A calm, unbroken voice carried through the void. "This is Earth Command," it said. "To all who can hear us, if you come for our home, know this, our silence is not fear. It's warning." The message ended, and the sky above Earth burned brighter than ever before. Above Earth's burning sky, the Imperial fleet spread across orbit like a sea of black steel, the sunlight vanishing behind its shadow. Admiral Tavaran of the 9th Dominion Fleet stood tall on the bridge of his colossal flagship, Obsidian Spear, his golden armor reflecting the eerie crimson of the planet below. Around him, his officers moved quickly, their voices confident, their arrogance unshaken. "No response from the surface, sir," said a lieutenant. "All global signals have gone dark. Power grids are offline." Tavaran smirked. "Typical. They're shutting themselves down to hide. A primitive act from a primitive world." His second officer, a thin reptilian creature, chuckled. "Should we send the first drop units?" Tavaran waved a hand lazily. "In time. Let them tremble first. Fear softens resistance." But deep inside, even he felt something off. The planet should have been screaming. Chaos, military movements, radio noise, but there was only silence. A dead, deliberate silence. Far below, buried beneath the surface of the Rocky Mountains, humanity was anything but silent. The Earth Defense Command was fully awake now. Every light in the bunker burned red, every screen alive with coded streams. Commander Helena Ward paced through the command deck, her voice sharp and controlled. "Report. Satellite grid is down." All military satellites switched to shadow mode, a technician replied. "Phase 2 initiated. Civilian communication lines successfully severed." Helena nodded, eyes on the holographic display showing the enemy fleet in orbit. "Good. The Empire thinks we're blind. That's exactly what we want." She turned toward a secure console guarded by 2 soldiers. "Activate Project Mirage." In a distant control room, an old officer entered a code on a console buried beneath glass. Deep under the Atlantic, devices long forgotten came online. Invisible frequencies pulsed through the oceans, forming an electromagnetic net around the planet. The Empire's scanners suddenly began to glitch. "Sir, we're losing visual lock on the planet," cried one of the officers aboard the Obsidian Spear. Tavaran frowned. "Define losing lock." The officer's eyes widened, the entire biosignature, gone. "Our sensors are reading nothing. No cities, no energy, not even water movement." "That's impossible," Tavaran snapped. "You can't hide an entire planet." But that's exactly what Earth had done. From inside the bunker, Commander Ward watched as the hologram displayed flickering dots, each representing one of the Empire's vessels. "They've lost us," she said softly. "All units prepare for countermeasure deployment." Priority 1 targets are orbital command ships. If we do this, there's no going back, one officer warned. Ward's expression hardened. They declared war when they entered orbit. Her hand hovered over the activation switch. Let's show them who they invaded. Miles below the surface, the Earth's magnetic core pulsed, transmitting energy to secret facilities scattered across the globe. One by one, subterranean silos opened. From beneath the Nevada desert, the first Aegis rail platforms emerged, their colossal cannons aligning toward the sky. Over the Pacific, automated war drones launched from floating sea bases disguised as reefs. Hidden beneath Antarctica's ice, the Black Horizon hangars powered on, awakening the ships that had slept for generations. And above it all, the voice of humanity's defense echoed through secure frequencies. "This is Earth command to all Terran defense units," Ward said, her tone unwavering. "The invasion has begun. Engage the ghost grid. Let them see nothing. Let them fear everything." Meanwhile, aboard the Obsidian Spear, confusion was turning to unease. "Admiral, our targeting systems are malfunctioning. Every scan returns false data. Countermeasures? None effective, sir. The readings change every second." The bridge filled with static as the Admiral slammed his gauntlet on the control rail. "Find their command centers. I want their leaders in chains before sunset." But before his fleet could fire, the first blow came. Without warning, an enormous beam of light erupted from the Pacific Ocean, piercing the clouds and striking one of the Empire's cruisers dead on. The ship disintegrated instantly, breaking apart like glass in the atmosphere. The fleet panicked. "Energy weapon detected," shouted the comms officer. "Source unknown, multiple readings across the surface." Tavaran stared in disbelief. "Impossible. They have orbital weapons." "No, sir," replied his aide, his voice trembling. "They are coming from the ground. From every ocean, from every mountain, Earth fought back. Missiles streaked upward from invisible silos, rail cannons launched magnetized rounds that traveled faster than light, and cloaked drones swarmed the Imperial formation. Within minutes, 3 more ships exploded, their wreckage burning across the upper atmosphere like falling stars. Cities below watched the spectacle, some crying, some cheering, as news networks returned with a single message on every screen: "We are fighting back." Inside the Imperial bridge, chaos spread. "Their weapons are using quantum trajectory. We can't lock." Shields collapsing on the forward wings. "Retreat path blocked. What the hell is that?" On the horizon of space, massive structures emerged, cloaked until now. Dozens of enormous vessels, black and angular, gliding out from the moon's shadow. Their surfaces absorbed the sunlight, their silhouettes vast and menacing. They were not alien, they were human. Humanity's hidden fleet had been sleeping behind the moon for 50 years, invisible to every scanner. "Admiral," said the trembling lieutenant, "those are Terran warships." Tavaran froze, unable to speak. On the Vigilant, the flagship of the Terran Defense Fleet, Admiral Marcus Hale watched the Imperial fleet scatter like frightened insects. "So they finally came," he said quietly. Commander Ward's voice crackled through his comms. "We're fully engaged, Admiral. The ground's holding. You may proceed." Hale smiled faintly. "Copy that. Let's clean the skies." He turned to his crew, his voice cold and sharp. "Target the flagships. Fire at will." The first Terran strike broke the sound of space itself. Blue beams of plasma shot from the Vigilance cannons, tearing through the Obsidian Spear's escort ships. The Empire fired back, their weapons blazing, but every shot missed, deflected by gravitational shielding. On Earth's surface, people looked up to see flashes of light streaking across the sky, humans and aliens locked in a battle that painted the heavens in fire. The Imperial Armada tried to regroup, but humanity's tactics were beyond anything they had faced. Human AI intercepted every Imperial transmission, rerouted commands, and fed false coordinates to their navigation systems. Imperial ships collided with one another, crashing into their own formations. "We're firing on friendly vessels," screamed one pilot. "They are jamming us." No, Terran growled. They're outsmarting us. In the command bunker, Ward received the live feed of the battle. Fleet reports 60% enemy losses, said her communications officer. Earth orbit clear in one hemisphere. And ours? She asked. Minimal, he replied. Their weapons can't even penetrate our shields. Ward exhaled slowly. Then keep pushing. No mercy until they're gone. Back aboard the Obsidian Spear, alarms blared. Admiral, their flagship, closing fast. Through the viewport, Terran saw it, a massive human warship descending through the upper atmosphere, its name emblazoned in white letters across the hull, Vigilant. It wasn't just a ship, it was a statement. Humanity had stopped hiding. Fire everything, he shouted, but it was too late. The Vigilant fired a single shot. A blinding flash filled the stars, and the Obsidian Spear split apart, its core imploding silently. For a moment, the battle paused. The Imperial fleet hung broken and scattered, the earth shining beneath their ruins. On every Terran frequency, a voice echoed, steady and unflinching. This is Admiral Hale of Earth Command. To any surviving invaders, leave our world, or join your admiral. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, absolute. And then, one by one, the remaining Imperial ships turned and fled. On Earth, people emerged from shelters to see a sky filled not with fear, but with light, the debris of a destroyed armada burning up in the atmosphere. Commander Ward stood in her control room, her expression unreadable as she whispered, "We didn't start this war, but we'll finish it if we must." Above the planet, in the vastness of space, the Terran fleet drifted silently in victory. No cheers, no celebration, only quiet resolve. They knew this was not the end. Humanity had won the first battle, but the Empire would come again. And when it did, the universe would remember the day the invaders came to Earth and found annihilation waiting for them. The war was not over, not even close. The Empire's retreat was not a surrender but a promise of vengeance. Their defeated ships limping back into hyperspace to carry a message that would shake every throne in the galaxy. The message was simple and terrible: Earth fights back. In the weeks that followed, silence hung across the stars, a kind of breath before the storm. The humans rebuilt quickly, faster than anyone thought possible, salvaging wreckage from the fallen Imperial fleet, reverse engineering alien tech, and feeding it into their own war machines. Beneath the cities, hidden factories worked day and night, churning out new weapons and ships, each one bearing the insignia of the Terran Defense Command, a black Earth surrounded by a ring of stars. To the outside world, Earth had vanished again from galactic sensors, cloaked by its magnetic shields, but the galaxy was watching, terrified, waiting to see what the humans would do next. Far beyond the solar system, inside the imperial capital of Virel Prime, the Council of Lords gathered for an emergency session in the Hall of Dominion, a vast marble chamber glowing with gold light and arrogance. The Emperor himself, Cader Valis, sat upon a throne carved from the bones of a dead world, his crimson robes flowing around him as he listened to Admiral Tavaran's final transmission, his death scream cut short by static. Around him, nobles shouted over one another, their voices dripping with fear disguised as fury. "They destroyed the Ninth Fleet," one cried. "Impossible. Oath was primitive. They used weapons beyond our senses. Ghost ships. Black hulls. Not of this age." The Emperor raised his hand, and silence fell like a blade. "So," he said coldly, "the savages have learned to bite. Then we shall remind them why the galaxy fears the Empire." His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with humiliation. Across the room, a younger admiral, lean and ruthless, stepped forward and bowed. "If it pleases the throne, I will lead the vengeance fleet myself." The Emperor studied him. "Admiral Serac, you speak boldly." "Because I have seen their tactics, my Emperor. They hide. They strike from shadows. But shadows end when you burn the sky." The Emperor's thin smile returned. "Then burn it." He gestured, and the council erupted in motion. Within days, the largest fleet in Imperial history began to form. A fleet of nearly 100,000 ships, armed with every weapon known to their kind. It was called the Eternal Crusade, and its mission was simple: erase humanity from existence. Back on Earth, Commander Helena Ward stood before the digital map of the solar system, her face illuminated by hundreds of glowing dots, unknown signals approaching from deep space. "They are coming," she whispered. Around her, the command staff moved quickly, their faces grim but determined. "How long until they reach the system?" 6 standard days, a technician replied. "They're moving fast. Too fast." "Good," she said quietly. "That gives us time." She turned to her communications officer. "Patch me through to Admiral Hale." In orbit above the moon, aboard the Vigilant, Admiral Marcus Hale appeared on the holoscreen, his expression calm but unreadable. "They took the bait," he said. Ward nodded. "They're sending everything." "Then they've already lost," Hale replied. "Have the Leviathans been moved?" "All 6 are positioned along the Oort perimeter," Ward confirmed. "The rest of the fleet stands ready for Phase 3. "And the civilian evacuations?" "Completed. Every city is underground or shielded." "Good." Hale's eyes narrowed. "Now let's make history." The days passed in silence, the kind of silence that bends the air before a storm. Across Earth's surface, lights dimmed as cities shifted into blackout mode, power redirected to the planetary shields. In the skies, nothing moved but the faint glimmer of orbital mines and drone sentries drifting in the void. The world held its breath as the enemy approached. And then, on the 6th day, the stars changed. At first, it looked like a distant shimmer, thousands of tiny dots forming along the horizon of space. But as they drew closer, the truth became clear. The Imperial fleet had arrived. 100,000 warships stretched across the edge of the solar system, a wall of firepower that dwarfed anything in human history. On the bridge of his flagship Imperion's Wrath, Admiral Serac smiled. "Prepare the bombardment," he ordered. "No ground invasion. We burn their oceans, their cities, their clouds. Leave nothing alive." But as the Imperial ships advanced, something strange began to happen. Their sensors flickered. Navigation systems glitched. Communication channels filled with static. "Sir," one officer said nervously, "we're losing signal cohesion. It's like the stars are moving." "Nonsense." Serac barked. "Maintain course." But then, the stars did move. Entire constellations shifted in the blackness, because they weren't stars at all. They were ships. Massive, silent, and blacker than space itself. The Leviathan fleet had arrived. "Unknown contacts on all sides," another officer shouted. "We're surrounded." Before Serac could respond, a human voice broke through every Imperial channel, calm and sharp. "This is Admiral Marcus Hale of Earth Command. You came to our world once. You called us prey. You called us primitive. Now, you'll learn what that word means to us." And then the transmission cut off. A moment later, the void exploded in light. The Vigilant fired first, its plasma beam slicing through the nearest dreadnought as though it were paper. The Leviathan-class warships moved with terrifying precision, their rail cannons firing projectiles so dense they folded gravity around themselves. The Imperial fleet responded, unleashing tens of thousands of plasma volleys, but they hit nothing. Human ships bent light, scattering every targeting signal. The battle became chaos. The Eternal Crusade, the pride of the Empire, was being torn apart. On the surface of Mars, human soldiers stationed at the orbital defense grid watched the battle unfold across holographic displays. "It's working," one whispered. "They can't even touch us." Commander Ward's voice came over the channel. "Don't underestimate them. They'll fight until their last breath." "And us? We don't breathe when we fight," she said coldly. "We burn." Back in orbit, Admiral Serac's flagship shook violently as a Leviathan projectile tore through its flank. "They are monsters," shouted his aide. Serac gritted his teeth. "No, they are humans." He slammed his fist on the console. "All ships, fire at will. Target the largest vessel." The Imperial fleet focused its fire on the Vigilant, thousands of energy beams converging on one point. But the moment before impact, the Vigilant vanished. It reappeared behind them, its engines burning blue. Quantum displacement, Serac whispered in horror. They've mastered it. The Vigilant opened fire again, and the void turned white. Entire squadrons disappeared, their ships melting into vapor. Human drones, shaped like spears of light, weaved through the wreckage, piercing through enemy armor and detonating reactors from within. In less than 30 minutes, half the Imperial Armada was gone. Admiral Serac, furious and desperate, opened all frequencies. "Earth Command," he shouted. "You can't win against the Empire." For the first time, a human voice answered directly. Commander Ward appeared on the screen, calm and unshaken. "We already did." Then the screen went black. The Imperium's wrath shook once, twice, and then split apart, its core imploding as the Vigilant's main cannon fired. The explosion spread through the formation, chain reacting across thousands of ships. What remained of the Eternal Crusade turned to light, and then to dust. When it was over, silence returned once again. Earth floated unharmed beneath the fading embers of war. The stars glimmered faintly, but something in the galaxy had changed forever. The Empire's fleets were gone, its pride shattered, its legends rewritten by the species it had once mocked. On the bridge of the Vigilant, Admiral Hale stood quietly as the debris drifted past the viewport. "Status report," he said. "All enemy ships neutralized," Riley replied. "Minimal casualties on our side." Hale nodded slowly. "Good. Send this transmission to every system in range." He looked at the comms officer and spoke clearly. "Message, this is Earth Command. The Empire came for us, and we are still here. Let that be enough." Across the stars, the message spread like wildfire. To some, it was a warning. To others, a prophecy. But to the survivors of the Empire, it was something worse. A reminder that no matter how vast the galaxy became, humanity was always watching. And when the next fleet dared to come, they would find the same answer written in fire across the heavens. Earth does not fall. The galaxy had never felt so small, its mighty empires once sprawling like endless oceans now trembling like frightened islands scattered in the dark. The destruction of the Eternal Crusade had shattered more than fleets. It had shattered belief. Entire civilizations had grown up worshipping the Imperial banner, believing its fleets invincible, its word absolute. But now, whispers spread faster than light, whispers of a blue planet at the edge of the galaxy that had turned an empire to ash. They called it the Day of Fire, and every being that heard it understood one truth: Earth had returned. On the ruined capital world of Virel Prime, the Emperor sat in silence, the smoke of burning towers still rising around his throne. His once mighty palace now a hollow shell, the banners of the Dominion torn and drifting through shattered air. He stared at the holographic map showing the last known locations of his surviving fleets. There were none. Every red dot had turned to gray. His empire had ruled for 10,000 years, but it had taken humanity less than 10 days to erase it from the stars. Yet even in ruin, the Emperor's arrogance burned bright. "Rebuild," he hissed, his voice echoing across the empty chamber. "We will rise again." But his generals looked away, their faces pale with fear. They had seen the impossible. They had seen ships that bent light, weapons that rewrote physics, and humans who fought like gods without mercy or hesitation. One general finally spoke. "Your Majesty, there are no shipyards left. The colonies are silent. The people whisper that the humans are still out there, watching." The Emperor slammed his golden scepter to the ground. "Then find them. Find them before they strike again." But even he knew deep inside that this was no longer war. It was survival. Far away, in the calm void beyond Jupiter's orbit, the Terran defense fleet drifted like phantoms, their engines silent, their weapons cooling, their crews exhausted but alert. On the bridge of the Vigilant, Admiral Marcus Hale stood before the viewport, watching the distant sun glimmer across the debris field where the Empire's fleet had died. Commander Riley approached quietly. "We've intercepted transmissions from the outer colonies, sir. The Empire's command structure is collapsing." Hale didn't move, his eyes fixed on the horizon of space. "Good, let it collapse under its own weight," he said softly. "We won't need to finish what gravity will do for us." And what of the survivors? Riley asked. Hale turned, his expression calm but cold. They came here for conquest, they found extinction. We will not chase them, but we will watch. Always. Across Earth, the world began to emerge from the underground shelters. People stepped into the sunlight for the first time in weeks, their eyes wide as they looked up at a sky still streaked with trails of burning wreckage. The night before had been filled with fire, but this morning was filled with silence, and in that silence, humanity stood together like never before. There were no borders, no governments, no divisions. Only one species that had faced annihilation and answered with something stronger than survival: unity. In the ruins of old New York, a child picked up a fragment of alien armor and asked her mother, "Are they gone?" The woman looked up at the sky where human warships glimmered faintly in orbit and smiled faintly. "No, they just learned what happens when you touch Earth." But for Admiral Hale, victory brought no comfort. Inside the Vigilance War Room, the holographic projection of the Milky Way spun slowly, hundreds of red markers flashing deep in the unexplored sectors. "Those are their colonies," Commander Riley said. "If we leave them, they'll rebuild." Hale nodded. "They will, but not as they were," he said. "Fear will shape them now. Fear of us." He turned toward the window, his reflection merging with the stars. "They called us a primitive race, but they never understood. Our strength was never in our machines, it was in our will." Meanwhile, deep in the Empire's remaining territory, panic spread like wildfire. Slave worlds revolted, colonies broke away, and old enemies rose to fill the void. The galaxy was fracturing, and in that chaos, something strange began to happen. Other species, once silent under Imperial control, began to whisper the name of Earth not as a curse, but as a hope. They fought the Empire, they said, and won. In taverns, in council halls, in the backstreets of forgotten worlds, humanity became legend. Stories of the battle spread and grew. Some said Earth had built ships from black holes. Others claimed their soldiers were made of light. But all agreed on one thing: the humans had done what no one else dared. They had defied the impossible. On the Vigilant, Hale received reports from agents scattered across the stars. "The outer systems are declaring independence," Riley reported. "Some are even calling themselves allies of Earth." Hale gave a quiet smile. "We don't need allies, we need time," he said. "Time for them to remember who taught them fear, and who gave them courage." He walked to the central console, bringing up the encrypted order he had written himself, its name glowing in blue across the screen: Project Silent Dawn. "What is that?" Riley asked. "The next phase," Hale said simply. "They thought they invaded us once. Now, we enter their galaxy unseen." The Terran fleet began to move, one ship at a time, vanishing into deep space under cloaking fields, leaving behind only empty orbit and drifting wreckage. The world below cheered their defenders. But they didn't know what was coming next. Humanity was not done. They were evolving, learning, preparing, because the Empire had not been the only threat. Somewhere beyond known space, other empires were watching too, studying, waiting. And Hale knew that one day they would come, and when they did, humanity would be ready again. In the Imperial ruins of Virel Prime, as scavengers picked through burned cities, a faint transmission echoed from deep space, reaching every surviving communication tower across the galaxy. It was a simple message, encoded in human language, one every being could understand. "To those who watched and waited, to those who believed us weak, remember this: Earth does not seek war. But if you bring it to our skies, we will erase it from yours." And as the message faded, the stars seemed to flicker, just for a moment, as though something enormous and silent had passed between them. In that flicker, every species understood that humanity had not vanished into peace. They had simply stepped back into the dark, becoming the Watchers, the unseen guardians of balance. And for the first time in the galaxy's long, arrogant history, the mighty did not fear each other. They feared Earth. The galaxy had changed forever, but change brought chaos, and chaos bred fear. In the months following the fall of the Empire, countless worlds drifted into anarchy. Trade collapsed, supply routes vanished, and the vast galactic economy, once controlled entirely by Imperial hands, crumbled like dust in a storm. Out in the border systems, warlords rose from the ashes, each claiming to be the rightful heir to the Empire's throne. each promising to avenge its defeat. But none dared utter the name of their enemy aloud. To speak of Earth was to invite nightmares. They called the humans the Silent Ones, the Children of the Void, or simply, the End. Every whisper carried fear. Entire fleets refused to patrol near the Sol sector. Merchant convoys changed routes to avoid it. The galaxy was vast, but now every star seemed to burn under the memory of one blue world that had turned gods into ash. Admiral Marcus Hale watched the chaos unfold through the holographic projection inside the Vigilance command chamber. Reports streamed in from all corners of known space. Civil wars, riots, fleets defecting, worlds severing ties with the remnants of the Dominion. He stood silent, his hands clasped behind his back, his reflection mirrored in the map's glowing light. The Empire's collapse is accelerating, Commander Riley reported. Half their sectors are fighting themselves. The rest are starving. Hale's expression didn't change. Good, he said quietly. Let them remember who brought the fire that ended their arrogance. Riley hesitated, then asked, and when they remember, sir? What then? Hale turned his head, eyes cold. Then they'll learn to fear peace as much as they feared war. Beneath the clouds of Earth, in the underground command network that spanned continents, Commander Helena Ward led the reconstruction. The war had united humanity, but unity was fragile. Nations were still learning to trust each other again after decades of silence and secrecy. Yet for the first time in history, there were no separate armies, no competing governments, just one flag, one voice, Earth Command. Under Ward's leadership, the planet rebuilt itself faster than any expected. Cities destroyed by orbital bombardment were restored in months, powered by energy salvaged from captured Imperial cores. New ships rolled out from shipyards hidden beneath the oceans, sleek, black, and silent, modeled after the Leviathan fleet. Humanity was no longer preparing for survival. They were preparing for dominion. While the galaxy fought to survive, humanity thrived in the shadows. Unknown to all, the Terran intelligence network had already begun its work. Human agents, trained, augmented, and invisible, slipped into alien societies disguised as refugees and traders. They gathered data, sabotaged weapons research, and quietly eliminated anyone who dared speak of vengeance. In every major world once loyal to the Empire, accidents began to happen. Shipyards exploding, governors dying mysteriously, fleets lost to malfunctions. To the galaxy, it seemed like bad luck. To Admiral Hale, it was order. We're not just fighting battles anymore, he told his inner circle. We're controlling the story. But not everyone on Earth agreed. Deep within the political chambers of the newly formed United Terran Assembly, voices began to rise against the secrecy of Earth Command. We cannot become what we destroyed, argued Senator Morgan Hayes, one of the few civilians granted access to classified reports. The galaxy fears us, yes, but fear will not last forever. Sooner or later, they'll unite again, not out of greed, but out of survival. And when they do, our strength will be tested in ways we cannot imagine. But Ward, sitting across from him, answered simply, then we'll be ready. Up in orbit, aboard the Vigilant, Hale stared at the growing fleet outside his window. Hundreds of ships, each more advanced than the last, their hulls lined with adaptive armor, their engines capable of folding across space without trace. He had spent his life fighting wars, but he knew something others did not. The true enemy was never the Empire. It was complacency. The moment we stop preparing, he said to Riley one night, is the moment we die. Fear built them. Fear destroyed them. We must learn to live above fear. And if we can't? Riley asked. Then, Hale said softly, we become what they feared most, something beyond it. Across the galaxy, the remnants of the Empire watched, desperate and divided. One of their last surviving admirals, a scarred veteran named Dravos Kryn, sat in the dark bridge of his crippled flagship, Iron Rain, orbiting a dying sun. Around him, what remained of his fleet drifted in silence. He stared at the holographic replay of their destruction. The moment the Vigilance beam tore through his comrades, vaporizing them in seconds. He clenched his claws and whispered, They think this is over. But we are not done. His officers exchanged uneasy glances. Admiral, one said, we've lost everything. We cannot rebuild. We cannot even leave this system. Dravos turned toward him, his eyes burning with fanatic rage. Then we do not rebuild fleets, we rebuild faith. And when faith returns, vengeance will follow. That night, in the shadow of a forgotten planet, the first cult of vengeance was born. They called themselves the Crimson Dawn. Made up of former Imperial loyalists, scientists, and deserters, they swore an oath to destroy Earth no matter the cost. They began to steal from the ruins, Imperial tech, alien weapons, experimental drives, and piece together something new. Their transmissions were silent, their movements invisible, but deep in the darkness between stars, a new storm was forming. Earth Command knew about them, of course. There was nothing the humans didn't know. Let them gather, Hale said when he received the intelligence report. Every rebellion needs hope. We'll be their nightmare when they reach for it. Commander Ward frowned. Should we strike first? Hale shook his head. No. They must believe they're safe. Fear grows best in silence. Months later, a fleet of stolen ships appeared on the edge of the solar system. Their signals scrambled, their engines burning red with stolen power. It was the Crimson Dawn. Their leader broadcast his challenge across all frequencies, his voice filled with pride and desperation. This is Admiral Dravos Kryn, loyal son of the Empire. We come for vengeance. We come for Earth. The reply came instantly, a calm, cold human voice transmitted across the void. This is Admiral Marcus Hale. You should have stayed in the dark. The battle that followed lasted less than an hour. The Crimson Dawn's ships never reached Mars orbit. The moment they entered the system, they were locked, jammed, and vaporized. When the last ship fell, a single message echoed across their dying comms. The day you invaded Earth was the day you buried yourselves. In the aftermath, Hale stood again at the bridge of the Vigilant, the stars reflecting in his eyes. They'll keep coming, Riley said quietly beside him. Hale nodded. Yes. And every time they do, they'll teach the same lesson to themselves. The galaxy may be vast, but there is only one home that no one conquers. He looked out at the distant blue marble of Earth and whispered, let them come. Humanity is patient. Humanity remembers. And somewhere far beyond the light of any star, deep in the dark where sensors could not reach, a beacon pulsed once more, the same signal that had awakened Earth's defenses months ago, the one the galaxy had learned to fear. It spoke in silence, but its meaning was clear. We are awake. The galaxy moved into an uneasy quiet that felt less like peace and more like the breath before another storm. The great empires had fallen, their fleets scattered like dust, their banners burned or forgotten. In that silence, humanity thrived. Earth had become more than a planet. It had become a symbol, a shadow that loomed over every world that still dared to dream of conquest. Merchants whispered the name Terrans with reverence and fear. Pirates avoided the solar boundary as if the void itself were cursed. But beyond the stillness, something else began to stir. Something patient, vast, and ancient enough to remember what fear really was. Humanity's victory had not gone unnoticed. In the dark edges of the galaxy, beyond mapped space, others were watching. Inside the command deck of the Vigilant, Admiral Marcus Hale stood in front of the star map projected across the room, watching red markers appear along the outermost edges of known space. Unidentified activity again? He asked, his tone steady. Commander Riley nodded. Yes, sir. Long-range sensors picking up movement from the Perseid Rim. Massive signatures, too organized for smugglers or scavengers. Hale narrowed his eyes. They are testing us, he said quietly. Someone out there thinks we're done fighting. He turned toward the crew. They are wrong. Down on Earth, Commander Helena Ward oversaw the global reconstruction. The world's cities now gleamed with new energy, fusion grids powered by captured alien reactors, transportation networks rebuilt under the same military precision that had won the war. Humanity had entered a golden age of unity, but Ward's eyes were still sharp with caution. Peace, she said to her advisors, is a weapon we use between wars. Nothing more. Every man and woman in her command room understood. They had seen what complacency cost the galaxy, and they refused to repeat it. Meanwhile, in deep space, beyond the reach of human senses, something moved. Hidden within the remains of the old Dominion, in a shattered nebula known as the Scar, the remnants of the Crimson Dawn had found something older than the Empire itself. Massive black structures floated silently in the nebula, pulsing faintly with blue light. Dravos Kryn, the last surviving leader of the Dawn, stared at the alien relics through his ship's viewport, awe and madness mixing in his voice. These machines were built before the first stars, he whispered. And with them, Earth will burn. His scientists tried to warn him that the technology was unstable, incomprehensible, perhaps even alive. But his obsession consumed him. He ordered the relics awakened. Back on the Vigilant, the first tremors were felt days later. Deep space observatories reported gravitational distortions far beyond human reach. Entire constellations began to flicker as if something enormous was moving between them. Hale studied the data, his jaw tightening. "It's not natural," he muttered. Riley's voice trembled slightly. "Could it be another fleet?" Hale shook his head. "No. Fleets have signatures. This is something waking up." Within weeks, the evidence was undeniable. Wormholes opened where none had existed before. Probes sent through them never returned. And then, the first message arrived. It wasn't human, nor Imperial. It was a broadcast across all known frequencies. A deep, resonant voice speaking in every language at once. "We watched your war. We watched your fire. Now, we will teach you silence." The galaxy froze. Across hundreds of worlds, systems went dark as communications were jammed by unknown signals. The few that managed to transmit images sent only glimpses. Giant ships, dark as night, moving like predators through the void. They weren't fleets. They were living. Their hulls pulsed like veins. Their weapons grew like bone. They didn't conquer. They devoured. Within days, 10 systems disappeared. Hale stood on the command deck, staring at the impossible. "They are harvesting stars," he said, his voice low. Riley swallowed hard. "Can we fight them?" Hale's silence was answer enough. On Earth, panic began to rise, but Ward crushed it with cold efficiency. "Activate Project Revenant," she ordered. The old bunkers roared back to life, and every Leviathan warship that had once destroyed the Empire began to awaken again. "If something's coming," Ward said grimly, "then we remind the galaxy who owns the dark." The first clash came at the edge of the Orion Belt. A small human fleet, 70 ships strong, met one of the creatures face to face. The battle lasted 6 minutes. The creature's energy field absorbed every weapon humanity had. Its counterattack destroyed half the fleet in a single pulse. The survivors described it as a black sun with teeth. But even as the fleet fell, humanity adapted. Hale analyzed every second of combat data and ordered the development of new weapons based on the creature's own energy patterns. Within a week, the first experimental cannons were built, massive, unstable, and terrifying. "We're not fighting an empire this time," he said. "We're fighting extinction." The next encounter went differently. This time, the Terrans struck first. The Leviathan Horizon's Edge ambushed one of the entities near a dying star, using the star's radiation to mask its approach. When it fired, the creature screamed. It didn't die, but it bled light, pure, burning light that spilled into space. The galaxy saw it. Hope returned. Across Earth, people watched the broadcast of the battle. Crowds filled the streets, cheering not in celebration, but in defiance. "We fought gods before," one soldier said. "We can do it again." Ward gave the order for full mobilization. Hale's fleet doubled, then tripled. New ships were forged not for defense, but for pursuit. Humanity had done what no species had ever dared. They took war to the unknown. The creatures began to retreat, but they left a final message in the skies of every conquered world. The same phrase appeared, carved in light across the stars: "You learned war from those who died." Now learn it from those who live forever. Back on the Vigilant, Hale watched the message dissolve, his reflection swallowed by the starlight. They think eternity frightens us, he said softly. They don't understand. We've been fighting it since we learned to stand. Riley turned to him. Orders, sir. Hale looked at her with a calm that bordered on divine. We go hunting, he said. And with that, the Terran fleet vanished into the abyss, engines silent, shadows cutting across the galaxy like blades of purpose. Humanity was no longer defending a home. It was writing its legacy into the stars, one battle at a time. The war that began with an invasion of Earth had now become something else entirely. The war to remind the universe that humans never stopped learning how to fight. The war that had begun as survival was now legend, spreading through the galaxy like fire whispered in the dark. Every world that had ever feared Earth now spoke of them as myth. The Terran fleet had vanished into the void months ago, hunting the ancient enemy that devoured stars, leaving behind only their promise, a quiet signal that pulsed every few days through the network of satellites still orbiting the human homeworld, a message so simple that it chilled the bravest species alive. We are still here. Across the ruins of once mighty empires, monuments were built where the empire had fallen. Broken ships left drifting in memorial orbit, black as night, engraved with the single word humanity. To the galaxy, it was both a warning and a reminder, a symbol that no one could erase. But for Admiral Marcus Hale, who commanded from the depths of the unknown, the war was far from over. It had evolved into something greater, a test of whether humanity's will could outlast the universe itself. In the darkness beyond the Perseid Rim, the Terran fleet hung silent, hidden inside a nebula so dense that even light struggled to move. The command ship, Vigilant, floated like a shadow among the stars, its hull glowing faintly with the energy of countless battles. Inside, Hale stood before the observation window, staring into the endless black. Report, he said. Commander Riley's voice was quiet but steady. We've tracked 3 of the entities moving toward the edge of the galaxy. The others, dispersed. Their energy signatures are unstable. Unstable. Hale repeated. Meaning dying. No, sir, she said, hesitating, changing. Hale's jaw tightened. Then we change faster. Humanity's engineers had long surpassed the limits of what the galaxy believed possible. They built ships that bent gravity, weapons that harnessed the collapse of stars, armor that could survive inside a supernova. But what set them apart wasn't their technology, it was their defiance. They had studied the ancient creatures, dissected fragments of their essence, and discovered something terrifying. These beings were not born, they were made. Artificial, sentient weapons from a civilization older than time, designed to reset galaxies when empires grew too powerful. The thought chilled even Hale. So this was never war, he murmured. It's maintenance. The universe itself had tried to erase them, and failed. When word of this truth spread across the scattered colonies of surviving species, the galaxy trembled again. Species that had once feared Earth now sent messages, begging for alliance, protection, or mercy. On the rebuilt Earth, Commander Helena Ward faced a council of alien ambassadors for the first time in human history. They came humbled, their voices shaking. You fought the end, one said, and survived. How? Ward's expression was calm but unreadable. Because we stopped fighting for survival, she said. We started fighting for memory. We wanted to be remembered longer than the stars that judged us. The aliens didn't understand her words fully, but they felt the truth in her tone, that humanity's endurance was not born of strength, but of refusal. Far from home, the Terran fleet pursued the last of the entities, chasing them through collapsing wormholes and dying systems. They moved like hunters through a burning forest, silent and relentless. When one of the creatures was finally cornered near a dying sun, it spoke, not with words, but with thought. You cannot win, it whispered inside the minds of every human aboard. You are temporary. Hale stood on the bridge, his voice quiet but steel. Then so is everything else. The Vigilant's main cannon charged, the sun itself bending under the weapon's pull, and with one shot, the creature was gone, reduced to a ripple in the dark. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy's balance shifted. The Watchers had fallen, and the humans had become something else, the new constant. But victory came with cost. The fleet had traveled so far into the void that returning was almost impossible. Many of its ships were lost to silence, their signals fading one by one. Yet Earth never stopped listening. Every year, a single transmission would arrive, sometimes faint, sometimes clear, a voice repeating only one phrase, "We endure." Generations passed, and humanity changed again. Earth became a beacon world, the center of a new alliance built not on conquest, but on warning. They shared their knowledge, their technology, and their stories, but always ended with the same lesson: never mistake kindness for weakness, because we are the descendants of fire. Centuries later, when a child on a distant colony asked his teacher if humans were real, the old man smiled faintly. "They were," he said, "and if the stars still remember, they still are." In the skies above that colony, a shadow moved, a single massive ship gliding silently through the dark, its hull bearing a faded insignia, Terran Defense Command. The ship did not hail, did not stop, did not speak. It simply passed, its wake stirring the stars, as if to remind the universe that somewhere, out there, humanity still watched. And on Earth, deep beneath the mountains of what was once Colorado, the ancient bunker of Earth Command remained sealed. Inside, the last logbook of Admiral Marcus Hale rested beneath layers of dust. His final entry read, "If this is found, know this, we were not born to rule the stars. We were born to defy them. And as long as one human heart beats in the dark, the universe will never know peace again." Outside, the wind whispered across the planet's silent plains, carrying the faint hum of distant machinery buried deep within the ground. Somewhere below, the ancient systems of the Terran Defense Network flickered to life once more, their lights blinking softly like eyes awakening after a long sleep. And from the depths of the Earth, a transmission began to rise, a signal the galaxy hadn't heard in centuries. It was the same one that had once echoed before the first war, before the first victory, before the first annihilation. "This is Earth Command," the voice said, calm and steady, across every known frequency. "To whoever listens, remember what happens when you bring war to our world." And in that moment, across the cold, endless night of space, countless civilizations paused and turned their eyes toward the blue planet that refused to die. Humanity had become eternal, not because of their power, but because they were the only species that never learned when to stop fighting. They had become the guardians, the nightmares, and the promise of the stars. The day the Empire invaded Earth had ended long ago. But the legend of humanity, the species that answered with annihilation, was only just beginning.